congregation this morning. So I'm going to just briefly make a short explanation of what I'm going to read. I'm using a poem by the former Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams. It's entitled Advent Calendar. There are 4 stanzas or 4 parts, one for each week of Advent. And so what I've been doing is unfolding and trying to see where this poem is going. This poem talks about a second Advent, and sometimes it gets to be a little vague, and I think today is one of those days where it's slightly vague, but I think hopefully you'll get the point of where I'm going today. So I'm going to begin with the second stanza. He will come like frost, one morning when the shrinking earth opens on the mist to find itself arrested in the net of alien, sword-set beauty. As we continue our ever-unfolding reflections on anticipating a season of hope, I'm going to speak about the world as it is and the world as we can hope for it to be. Now, I was puzzled by the last phrase of this stanza, alien, sword-set beauty. What a turn of phrase I thought on first reading it. Remember last week when I mentioned that poetic imagery can describe things in a deeper fashion than ordinary words in a sentence that we might use to communicate with each other. This phrase stuck with me all week. Then, it dawned on me that there are many ways to look at the world around us, to see the world around us. Have you ever seen beauty that is sharp as a sword? Beauty that is clear, that passes all understanding? I might suggest that we've all seen something beautiful in nature that takes our breath away, and maybe, quite possibly, gives us a glimpse of the infinite. For me, one example was seeing the swirling movement of fog one July evening in San Francisco. Being in a place where one beholds this special type of beauty is called a thin place in Celtic Christianity. A wonderful definition of the term thin place comes from a New York Times travel writer, Eric Weiner. He defines a thin place as a locale where the distance between heaven and earth collapses and we're able to catch glimpses of the divine or the transcendent, or, as he likes to put it, the infinite whatever. Weiner would call our everyday mundane world, where we wait on checkout lines in supermarkets, thick places. I found myself thinking about the thick place, the world as you and I may see it, and the thin place, the world that God intends for you and me. Between those two worlds is this thing called hope, of wanting something wonderful to happen, something beyond our imagination to happen. I think Rowan Williams is trying to describe a thin place experience of the world that is yet to be. That is, I know it as the second Advent. Isaiah, in the reading we have from today, describes a world that begins from the remnant of an ancestral tree that is nothing more than a stump. And he speaks as a poet. To most of us, a stump is a remnant of a tree, a terminated plant from which nothing can grow. The once flourishing tree is felled at the end of Isaiah, and we get this image of Yahweh as a divine woodsman who takes an axe to the base of the tree, and we also have that reference too in the readings. So Yahweh working as this divine woodsman, chopping away, fells this tree and leaves this stump, which symbolizes end of the disastrous rule of David. And most of us know that David was anything ideal in terms of being a king. He was very human and did very human things. And the time that this is set, the times are uncertain. But in this uncertainty, God asks, will there be a king? So in the midst of this disheartening situation, God offers his people another chance. Hence, that little tiny shoot that appears from the stump of Jesse. This second growth is the hope of new life and the chance of a better outcome for all of creation. God will transform what was once considered lifeless into something living and full of possibility. One way to understand what Isaiah is describing is to think of the world that we currently live in as the stump that still has the possibility for renewed growth. There are lots of stumps in the world that are capable of new growth. And I might say, I'm one of them. God, in his ever-reconciling attempts to draw us into right relationship with him, is going to call into existence someone that will be able to incarnate or enflesh the hope of a better, more just world. We know that someone is Jesus. He is the sprout of life on an otherwise dead stump of a tree. Is it possible to see this kind of leadership in our own world? Have we had glimpses of a better world? I think so. This week brings the not-so-surprising but still unexpected news that Nelson Mandela has died at the age of 95 following a long illness. You may, by this time, have heard of him referred to by a name that sounds close to his last name, Madiba. When I heard it, I thought I was hearing wrong and that it was some kind of variation on his name, his last name, Mandela. But what Madiba is his clan name, his tribal name that he belongs to. So, calling someone by their clan name means more, and it's important because it speaks to that person's ancestry, where they come from, and who they are fundamentally. Mandela, by the way, is a descendant of the first Madiba, a Thembu chief who ruled in the Transkei. And as I explained at the 8 o'clock, I didn't want to use the term reservation, but essentially the apartheid government set aside a swath of land for the Xhosa, which is Xhosa speaking people. And so this is where this chief ruled in around, they say, the 18th century. I cannot help but think that Mandela saw a world as it was, a world that was inhabited by the sin of apartheid, and have hope for a different world where all would be treated justly. I cannot help but see in Mandela something of what Isaiah was promising in a new leader. Mandela has said in the past that he was never a saint, and a saint he defines as someone who is human, who keeps trying harder. Perhaps 27 years as a prisoner on Robben Island gave him time to mature and to transform himself into someone who would have the spirit of wisdom and understanding, the spirit of counsel and might, where righteousness shall be his belt around his waist, and faithfulness the belt around his loins. Surely Mandela has left his part of the world, and ours, a little better than it was when he came. And someone reminded me today that comparing Martin Luther King and Mandela, Martin Luther King did not get to see a portion of the dream that he spoke about, but Mandela was fortunate enough to live a long life to have a second chance at love, and to eventually die in his own bed. So he got to see a world that he hoped for. We hope that as Mandela belongs to the ages, his endeavor to envision a new world will not become a lifeless stump, but that his message will be like that sprout and live on as long as the sun endures and as long as the moon does throughout all generations. And may righteousness flourish and peace abound until the moon is no more. Is there hope for a peaceable kingdom? I'd like to think so. I'm an eternal optimist. I'd like to think that there is a world where the animals who are the diners and the animals who are the dinner can exist side by side. A child shall lead them. It'll be a world where a lion will eat grass just like a mouse, and a child cannot be bitten by a poisonous snake. The peaceful kingdom has been depicted in a number of paintings, and again, I explained at the 8 o'clock that it's a weird sort of picture, sort of like an alien sword set beauty. In one corner you've got William Penn and Native Americans poring over some papers for this grand new experiment that he calls a holy experiment, where people can live in peace. And then on the other side, you've got these wide-eyed animals that are kind of looking like Goo-Goo Dolls or something or other. And this little child in the midst of the lion and the snake and so on. Penn was envisioning a world where there would be peace, and that was what he was trying to do with his followers. The Advent season is a time to ponder this thing called alien sword set beauty in our midst. Advent calls for us to slow down and attempt to envision a world that is peaceable. There is a new world waiting to be born. Each year, we get another chance to live another Advent and to think on the stories of our shared history as a people of faith. Yes, we get to hear the stories again and again until perhaps they take hold in our hearts. Each new Advent that we live through should be an opportunity to see where the thin places are, where heaven and earth meet. Indeed, Christmas is about God piercing our reality, piercing into our world, our history, yet again, with the hope that his Son, Jesus the Christ, will set things right. May we have quiet moments this holiday to experience the story of his birth as a strangely beautiful